Tonight, I know the hearts and prayers of every American are right here.
We are one nation under God, and that's what we have to go back to, and that's what we have to remember.
We have you in our prayers.
Absolutely. The whole nation does.
A message of unity after an unspeakable tragedy. The nation comes together to mourn with a small Texas town. God is grieving. Those words from a preacher at tonight's vigil. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sarah Lucero. 3 days after the horror and heartbreak at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, the South Texas community stood together to begin the healing process. Tonight's prayer vigil honored the 26 people killed in Sunday's tragedy and the other 20 wounded. The first funeral service is scheduled for Saturday. Vice President Pence said tonight he is hoping for a chorus of prayers from the nation.
No attack, no act of violence will ever break our spirit or diminish the faith of the American people.
Before speaking in Floresville, the vice president stopped in Sutherland Springs to meet with the families of the victims, along with the church pastor and the Good Samaritans who risked their own lives to stop the gunman. The vice president's first stop was to meet with shooting survivors at Brooke Army Medical Center. He said he was deeply moved by their faith and their resiliency after a senseless act of violence. Jeff Brady was at tonight's vigil at the Floresville High School football stadium. And Jeff, a lot of heavy hearts tonight, but the community also finding strength and peace.
Well, that's right, Sarah. Texas faith and fortitude truly took center stage here tonight. Now, the football field behind me here at Eschenberg Stadium is considerably quieter now than it was 3 hours ago tonight when U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, Second Lady Karen Pence, U.S. Attorney General, the Texas Governor, and U.S. Senator Ted Cruz were all here to help this community begin the mourning process. Now, the service itself was about 1/3 prayer vigil, 1/3 Christian sermon, and 1/3 pledge of support from the Trump administration to help this community continue the difficult healing process ahead. We estimate the crowd size to have been about 3,000 people here. That's a guess. Many of them were still streaming in while the governor and while the vice president were making their remarks because security, as you can imagine, was extremely tight here. You had to go through a gauntlet of security checks before getting into the stadium. But overall, the crowd was very, very receptive. And my colleague Phil Anaya is here now with a little bit more about how the crowd reacted to all the speeches tonight. Phil?
Yeah, and you know, it was definitely a solemn event, but as you mentioned, you could feel a lot of positivity. By that, we heard standing ovations, for example, when the families of the victims came in, when they introduced those heroes that we've talked so much about were introduced, and we heard a lot of amens out throughout the stadium at this, just throughout different times of this vigil.
That's who I am. That's who I am.
It was yet another emotional night in Wilson County. Thousands showed up to stand in solidarity and pray with their neighbors, friends, and family.
It's such a small town, both Floresville and Sutherland Springs, so everybody pretty much knows somebody who's been impacted by this.
Words fail when saints and heroes fall.
The entire nation has been grieving with this community, and it was evident with the presence of Vice President Mike Pence.
The whole community comes together, so for the Vice President to come down here really means a lot. We want to show them that what us Texans are about, that we all come together in a tragedy.
In attendance were the families of the victims, surviving members of the church, the heroes who helped stop the bloodshed, and Pastor Frank Pomeroy and his wife, who lost their 14-year-old daughter in the shooting. Does something like this, a vigil like this, help with the healing process?
I believe it does. What about you?
Yeah, it does.
Because it gives people a chance to grieve together and talk with other people that, you know, about their loss.
And again, as Jeff mentioned, the governor was here and addressed the crowd. One thing he did was he also proclaimed November 12th, which is this upcoming Sunday, to be a day of prayer throughout Texas. So really, truly sad but special night for everybody in this community.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Phil. And Sarah, as you can probably tell, it has become pretty cold and wet and windy here, so no one really stuck around after this service ended, but I can guarantee you that the sentiment will remain in the hearts and minds of Texans as they move forward and try to heal from this. One final note, Stephen Willifer, who has now been identified as the Good Samaritan gunman who shot back at the suspect on that fateful day, was here in the crowd in attendance. In fact, he was recognized by the governor as a heroic piece of that tragedy, and he received one of the standing ovations that Phil mentioned in his piece. So that's all we have from here, reporting live from Floresville. Sarah, now back to you.
Looks like it was a beautiful, emotional evening. Thank you, Jeff. Well, that sense of unity and strength was felt here in San Antonio after what's been a rough, tiring, and trying year for first responders. Eyewitness News reporter Elisa Nieves continues our team coverage from Community Bible Church.
The lead pastor of Community Bible Church, Dr. Ed Newton, encouraged everyone to show benevolence, show kindness in the face of hatred. He told his church members, most of all, don't let fear prevent you from going to your place of worship.
I know that you have come now.
There's a resolve in this city, and tonight is a demonstration. Let the whole world know that the faith community in San Antonio stands strong.
The citywide prayer service at Community Bible Church established a reminder that our community can do more together than apart.
There's a tremendous level of fear amongst people in our community, especially coming to a public gathering, a place of worship. But what we want to say in these days is, in the midst of fear, if we choose not to be a part of our places of worship, then evil wins.
Look, our faith
District Attorney Nico LaHood, Chief McManus, and Chief Hood offered words of hope and encouragement. Next to a large cross with 26 candles, one for each life lost at First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs.
Do not change your lifestyle because of these incidents.
It is time for the church, Big C Church, to make us relevant again.
We must maintain our humanity, because if we don't, evil is going to win.
So when those who are grieving and hurting, when those who are skeptical have questions and seek help in a place of worship, Newton calls on all church members to be there waiting.
And they'll see us walk in bravery, much like the people of Sutherland Springs.
Alicia Nieves, KENS 5 Eyewitness News.